good to have you with us on the 9 p.m. edition of the Urban Debate. Viewers, tonight, Congress party finds itself in a bit of a fix for a party that has been raising questions and asking the government about PM CARES Fund, the fund that was set up for the COVID relief work and constantly keeps questioning the government on the use of those funds. That party is extremely quiet about some very important questions that have now been raised by the BJP instead about the PM relief fund from when the Congress party was in power. Let me explain it to you one more time. Here is what the BJP has alleged, and since then documents have emerged. BJP says that government money, the Prime Minister Relief Fund, National Relief Fund money, and from various other ministries was given as donation to the Rajiv Gandhi Foundation. This is at a time when the Congress party, when the UPA was in power. This is at a time when Manmohan Singh was our Prime Minister and Sonia Gandhi was the President of the Congress party. And both of these people were on the board of this Rajiv Gandhi Foundation. This was a big allegation made by JP Nadda earlier in the day. And since then, like I said, the documents have emerged. Now, what is it that these documents show? We went through some of the details and we could make out, and I'll give you just one example. The annual report of the Rajiv Gandhi Foundation for the year 2005 and 2006 lists all of the work that they did in different categories. And for each category of work that has been done, it has a list of the donors. So, for example, for work and projects that this foundation would have done in women and child development sphere, there was a donor named Prime Minister National Relief Fund. Donations came from PMNRF. Again, for women and child development projects, this foundation was given a donation by the Home Ministry. For literacy and education projects, there was a donation that was made by the Human Resource Ministry. And for Rajiv Gandhi Institute for Contemporary Studies, a donation was made by the Environment Ministry, by MSME Ministry, and a couple of other government departments. The list actually is long. Similar donations in 2006, 2007, 2007 and 8, 2008 and 9. And it actually continues. A lot of this, of course, stopped in 2014. So the big question that the BJP now is asking the Congress party is to explain what's just happened here right now. Now, I'm going to ask the BJP and the Congress to give us the details of what went on back then. Let's say good evening to the panelists who are joining us right now. Supriya Srinath of the Congress Party and Mr. Zafar Islam of the BJP. Supriya Srinath, it's very interesting. The news briefing that happened today actually didn't address any of these issues. Instead, there were either counter questions or responses about unconnected issues. Why is that?
So thanks for having me on the show. I'm actually traveling. I'm in my constituency in Maharajganj, but I will still answer and enlighten the dimwits who have put out misinformation and peddled lies. And it's important to do that. For anybody who understands how public charitable trusts or foundations work, both domestic and foreign, they get grants from corporate houses, and that is how they and welfare related work, whether it's health, education. Exactly what the Rajiv Gandhi Foundation does, just like a lot of what is done by the Vivekanand Foundation or the India Foundation, that is affiliated to the BJP. So that's exactly what the Rajiv your foreign money come into India without the approval of the
Supriya, I'm sorry, I'll have to come in here, but the line with you is very sketchy. I think it's because you're traveling and you're in Maharajganj. We're not able to hear you properly. It's very patchy. We're going to try and connect with you again. If not, get you on the phone line because this is an extremely important conversation. And Supriya Srinath needs to answer these questions very clearly. But from what I could make out and what she was saying, Mr. Zafar Islam, that this is no big deal. that these foundations get their money from various institutions for their charitable work. So why is a big deal being made out of that? What would you say to this response from the Congress party?
Maybe it's not a big deal for them because they are habitual offenders, they are the habitual fraudsters. So there's a party of fraud and fraudsters. Everyone knows that. So maybe it may not be a big deal for them, but for the people of this nation, it's a big deal because that money was meant for an ordinary citizen who need. This money could have been used for them, but this money was diverted. It's a fraud. It's embezzlement of fund which has been transferred and diverted to a private foundation, which is actually being run by the Gandhi family. So, on what basis it has been, with money which was meant for this for a needy fellow citizen, was diverted to a foundation which is a privately held foundation. So everyone understands the intent, the motive, because this money was uh, uh, was was diverted. Money should have been used somewhere else, but has been used somewhere has been diverted for some personal use. I think this is something which needs to be investigated, and these people have absolutely nothing to defend because they cannot defend this. It's something which is indefensible. And Supriya Siranathe, whatever she may want to say, but the fact is that is something which has been a crime which has been committed by Congress party leaders, is something which is so apparent and for everyone to see. And it is not that we are saying something which we cannot prove. It's just something for everyone to see that money should have never been diverted to a private foundation, which was actually Prime Minister Relief Fund is meant for fellow citizens. So
I'm just trying to understand before I go back to Supriya, Mr. Zafar Islam. For our benefit of our viewers, just tell us, how does it work for the Prime Minister National Relief Fund? People make donations, anybody can make a donation that goes to this fund, and then it is used for various purposes. For example, even in the categories here, I can see in the Rajiv Gandhi Foundation annual statements, it says for Kashmir flood relief work. Now, if the PM Relief Fund is to be used, is it done directly or is it done via organizations, private and government?
See, you have to understand whose government was there at that point in time. It was UPA government. Who was the chairperson of this foundation and chairperson of the UPA government? UPA. It was Sonia Gandhi. Who are the members of this board member of this foundation? All the former cabinet ministers. The former prime minister was the member of this foundation as a board member. So it was actually, they were only accepting money from, China, the Communist Party of China. They were accepting money because they would do something for them. They will compromise with the national interest. They will compromise with the national security, but and only to benefit China, for instance, that the studies which has been undertaken.
Okay, now one issue at a time. One issue at a time. One issue at a time, Mr. Zafar Islam. One issue at a time. You've made a serious charge. Let me get Supriya to respond to that. The charge of conflict of interest. Supriya Srinath, the fact that Dr. Manmohan Singh was a trustee of this organization and the Prime Minister when these donations were made by the PM Relief Fund. The fact that Sonia Gandhi was on the, founded this and chaired this foundation. She was the leader of the Congress party at that point of time when these donations were being made by her party. Yes, please go ahead.
That's a completely baseless and nonsensical charge. And coming from somebody who understands a little bit of economics and how financial of his party is.
Anyways, now that he is morally bound to defend his party's stupid stand, I will answer those questions.
Supriya, you cannot defend it.
Government both past and present. Mr. Zafar, you have had your time under the sun. Let me finish talking now, please. Otherwise, I will start interrupting every word that you say. That is not how debates happen. So please keep quiet. I was quiet all along. Let me speak now. Governments both past and present have given to government,
to
right?
RSS affiliates. How does Vivekanand Foundation have the land in Luty and Delhi that it does? How did it build the building? I would like to ask these questions. Where does the India Foundation get its money from? Apart from the domestic funding. So all I am saying is the 2005-6 funding that we're talking about is money that was used for tsunami. It has been accounted for, it is audited for, it is a part of our income tax filing, and it has been approved as well as reported to the FCRA. All I am saying, Tanvi Shukla, all these details, all the records are with the government. Why are they trying to waste precious time of this country? They have reports. Let them act on this. Why don't they instead answer questions on China? Because they don't have a face to. They're cowards. They're only resorting to diversionary tactics. Do you as a journalist not question the timing of these baseless allegations?
Can I just
Okay,
respond?
so let me just get one thing clear before I get Zafar Islam to respond to you. No, 1 minute. So, Supriya, the Congress party is saying there is nothing wrong in the fact that year after year, when you were in power, when UPA was running the government, year after year, multiple government departments and ministries, in any given year, at least 5 of them were making donations to the foundation run by the Gandhi family. Isn't that a bit bizarre? We couldn't find any other charity organization except the Rajiv Gandhi Foundation. There is certainly a conflict of interest here, or to some extent favoritism being played.
You know, that's a word I will not use simply because we don't seem to be. Is it not bizarre that the BJP government is giving donations and funds to Banvasi Kalyan Ashram, the Sarvati Shishu Mandir, which is all RSS and BJP affiliates? Do you not find it how, by that logic, is it not dubious that BJP is funding the Seva Shanti Sadan, which is again an RSS BJP affiliate? This is how NGOs are funded. This is how government doesn't do relief all on its own. It distributes money through relief. So are you telling me that the government of the day was wrong? Should it cancel the lease given to and the land given to Vivekanand Foundation? By what logic has Vivekanand Foundation got land in Luty and Delhi?
Oh.
It is BJP RSS affiliate. By what logic they got money from the government? It's
Let me get a response. Let me get a response. Zafar Islam, respond to that. Respond to that then,
Well,
Zafar Islam.
The real issue is China. The real issue is China and
No, she has spoken. Can I?
We are not going to raise questions.
Can I just
there.
respond?
We are just going to get
In any case, her voice is cracking. Can I just respond?
Go ahead, Zafar.
Tanvi, can I just respond?
Okay, now you can respond. She's finished with her point. Go ahead. Yes, Zafar Islam.
No, I think I have been on her program. She was a business journalist. And I fully understand that she would understand also that how the frauds have been committed by, or crime have been committed by the Congress party and its leader, and something so apparent and so clear. But still, she has to defend today. But it's okay. No, but please do not interrupt. Please do not interrupt us, Supriya.
I'm sorry, I will not be able to understand either of you two. I will not be able to understand either of you two. Supriya and Zafar Islam, let one at a time, please. One at a time, please. I will not be able to understand either of you. Yes, Mrs. Zafar Islam. Let's stick to the point. Answer what she is asking now. Answer what the Congress party is saying. This is just a diversionary tactic. If that was so wrong when the UPA did it, what explains the donations that are being made now?
See, everyone knows the Congress party is the party of fraud and fraudsters. Everyone knows that. The number of crime they've committed, they have always focused on.
I don't want generic comments here.
But they have always focused.
Okay.
They have always focused on making money for themselves and compromising with the national interest. Bunch of thieves together at the board level have committed this kind of crime, and not once, many times. Supriya, please listen. You know that the bunch of thieves have committed this crime, and you are defending something which is indefensible, and you should have defended it. As a business journalist, you must understand. You understand these are the crimes which your party leaders have committed today. Unfortunately, you will have to defend it. No matter what, you will not be able to defend it. So daring that this
national security.
So all I'm saying that even for China, And so Tanvi, she's interrupting because I know that she will not be able to defend. That's why she's time and again interrupting. She has no patience to listen to me. All I'm saying that even
Yeah, I'm just going to request Supriya to just let him finish it, please. Let him finish his point. Let him finish his point. Yes, let him. Can I just hear Zafar Islam finish his point, please?
that China's Communist Party has made a donation to Rajiv Gandhi Foundation. They chose Rajiv Gandhi Foundation because they know they are the one. These are the bunch of people who can sell countries' interests for their own benefits. And that's why they did. See the study which has been conducted by Rajiv Gandhi Foundation, where the study suggests that FTA should be signed with China so that Indian MSME, Indian entrepreneur, they should suffer. Then let Chinese entrepreneur make money. There the China make money, and that's the so apparent when you see the number that the trade deficit since in when they were in power between 2004 to 2012 had widened so steeply purely because these people have genuinely attempted to compromise with the national interest.
Mr. Zafar Islam, there have been 18 meetings. Mr. Zafar Islam, there have been 18 meetings between the two heads of the state since the Modi government came to power. There have been MOUs worth crores of rupees that have been signed between the two nations with Chinese money coming in during the Modi government. I think it's really, not going to worth and help your argument if you really sit here and say that the UPA government or UPA foundations actually took money from the Chinese and we didn't. I'm sorry, my apologies. I'm completely out of time here. The problem with these conversations is that you don't get direct answers from any of the political parties. You don't get answers from political parties, and all you see is name calling and finger pointing that happens instead of answering why the UPA government thought it was right for department after department, from Home Ministry to the PM Relief Fund, to donate money to one Rajiv Gandhi Foundation year after year. The Congress party will now turn around and simply say, well, that's what the others do. That's what the BJP is also doing. They just want to not talk about China. If you ask the BJP, if that is the system, if that is the norm, and if indeed donations are made from government agencies to various charitable organizations, if indeed that's still happening, they won't answer that. They will simply go on to make generic comments to say, well, the Congress party is a chore party. Doesn't really solve the purpose. I wish we would actually rather have the two parties ask each other as opposition and answer as government on more important constructive conversations and issues like China. Completely out of time. Thank you both to Supriya Sreenet and Zafar Islam for joining us on this conversation. Let's quickly move on to the second big conversation that we are going to have tonight, viewers. We've got some big stories lined up for you. And the second one actually is related to China and the international comments that are now coming in the middle of this standoff that's taking place between India and China. Now, as India discusses this militarily and tries to resolve this militarily with our neighbor, as we take it up diplomatically with our neighbor, as we figure out our economic ways to hit back at China, there is also United States that has been making some very interesting comments. And President Trump has already said that he's spoken to both sides. He is willing to offer his help and step in. Of course, both India and China have said nothing about wanting U.S. intervention. But let me also tell you what the U.S. Secretary of State, Michael Pompeo, recently said. He said that Washington will make it sure that it is postured appropriately to counter the Chinese army. Now, this comment comes not just in the backdrop of the military face-off happening between India and China in the Ladakh sector, but it is also the Chinese flexing their arms in various directions, flexing their muscles in various directions, from what's been attempted in Vietnam, in Taiwan, and several other places. And here is the United States saying that we are not going to hesitate either in positioning ourselves militarily. What does that mean for this entire region? How do we read these comments and these signals coming in from United States for the conflict, for the face-off happening between India and China? To simply break it down for us, we've got two experts who are joining us, Maruf Raza, our strategic affairs expert, and Professor Harsh Pant, Director for Studies and Head of Strategic Studies Program at ORF with us this evening. Professor Pant, let me begin with you. The comments and the signals that are coming from United States in the light of the India-China face-off, let's start with that. Does it impact us at all? Does it change the equation in any sense for us, or how China may respond, may act from here on?
Thank you. India ultimately will have to fight its own battles. India has to struggle with China on its own. But clearly what is happening between US and China is a struggle between US and China that is about supremacy in the Indo-Pacific. And I think India is peripheral in this larger scheme of things. So Mr. Pompeo is signaling to China that America is willing to stand up to China. America is willing to send its forces and rotate its forces from Europe to Indo-Pacific, which has been a theater which has been often talked about as the center point for American defense posture for some time. But they have not done much about it. Now they are saying that, look, there is a crisis in South China Sea, there is a crisis in the Himalayas, let's bring our troops there, let's make a show of force. Clearly, it is going to be, one more pressure point for China. And as far as I am concerned, any additional pressure on China is good at this moment. But to expect that to resolve our boundary problem with China, I think is a bit of an exaggeration. It's not going to help us there.
Okay, Maruf, would you agree with that, that this doesn't directly really impact or benefit us in any sense?
You see, Tanvi, I have a lot of regard for Professor Harsh Pant's views, but I would like to take the discussion forward in one or two other directions. There is a term in military usage which is called force multiplier. Even diplomatically, there are force multipliers that countries can adopt. And in the current context, a force multiplier would be the Americans showing up on your side much more than they have in the past. Now, I am not at this point of time committing that India should go in for an alliance. But if you were to push me to the wall and say, should we, I wouldn't mind the idea if it helps me guard my sovereignty. The second point is that America is a military-industrial complex. It is always looking to have a say in global conflict situations and in what could be seen as possible conflict situations. There is an American analyst on South Asia, a CIA man now with Brookings, Bruce Riedel, who's most recently released a book in which he argues that if you go back to the Kennedy papers with Nehru and of that time, and if you analyze it in the context of what's happening now, it would not be too far-fetched for Americans to believe that the China-India boundary conflict could become the flashpoint for the next world war. Now, it may be a bit of an overstretch to make that point, but what really works with China is they close your options, you then go in for other strategic options by diverting their attention and putting pressure on them. Otherwise, you can keep wrestling on the border and you can only do that much. The other aspect to understand is that if we go in for a more stronger alliance with the Quad, which is now developing into a fairly serious maritime arrangement, though in its nascent stages, it could become a NATO-type alliance, and the thumb rule being that NATO countries that follow the model that an attack on one NATO country involves all others. Now, the Quad includes America, Japan, Australia, and it could soon have Vietnam and even Korea joining in. And these are pressure points that you need to exercise on China, because China has really gone on the diplomatic rampage now. They are threatening to blow up some microfetch and micro software technology factories in Taiwan. America's moved to aircraft carriers there, and many other aircraft groups and fighters and submarines. They are wanting and have for long occupied territory in South China Sea, but now they've become more aggressive in the aftermath of the COVID fiasco, for which everyone is blaming China. And China, which has been a beneficiary of Western systems which allowed China to become economically a giant is now stretching itself in too many directions. I fear China is becoming a bit of a Hitlerist model of World War II when Hitler opened up on too many fronts and then eventually saw the collapse of the Nazi regime. But having said that, I think India needs to adopt a far more evolved strategy towards China. For too long, our politicians and diplomats believed that if you didn't formally align yourself with the US, the Chinese would not get upset. But the Chinese really don't give a damn about who you align with or not. They are after territory, they're after waters, they're after linking up with the Karakoram Pass ahead of Galwan in the north and linking up with the Shastam Valley and the POK area. And they're not going to stop short of it without a conflict.
Okay. Okay, Maruf Azhar believes they will not stop short of it without a conflict. There are many, though, Professor Pant, who believe that China is just going to be interested in keeping the pot boiling, whether it's, along the border with India or Taiwan, Vietnam, wherever else they have been attempting to do this. It's just to keep the pot boiling. What would your response be to what Maruf is saying?
No, I'd say I don't disagree with a lot of what Maruf is saying. My only larger point here is that America is not doing this. America is not shifting its forces towards Indo-Pacific because it wants to help India. It is doing this because there are larger questions about American grand strategy that are at play. America is struggling. Trump administration is struggling with its NATO partners. They are removing troops from Europe towards Indo-Pacific. They want to show both to Europe that, look, you have to foot the bill as far as NATO is concerned. They are showing it to China that, look, we are here in your vicinity to fight and to raise the stakes for you. So clearly, America is doing a lot of things for its own benefit. There are going to be benefits, as I said. I am all for pressure points. If America creates these pressure points, it's very good for India. The question, I think, for India is, which Maruf has raised, is to decide what it needs to do in the short to medium term to preserve its territorial sovereignty and to make a case to China that it is serious about it. At the moment, China does not think that we are serious about it because sometimes we talk of equidistance between China and America. Sometimes we say, no, we don't. We are still non-aligned. Sometimes we talk about getting close to America will have cost. Sometimes we talk about China, accommodating Chinese interests. So I think a certain clarity is important from India's side. And if Indian policymakers decide that they need a relationship, a more robust relationship with America to counter China, then I think that would be for the good. I mean, I don't deny the possibility that would be a force multiplier. India on its own does not have the capabilities to tackle China. So clearly, I think you need partners. You need partners that can help build your capacities. You need partners as a show of force to deter and dissuade a country like China. But questions are whether we are in a position to decide on that. But to think that Americans are doing this primarily for India, that would be a mistake. And we should be clear-eyed about it. We should be clear-eyed about American interests. We should be clear-eyed about Chinese interests. And we should be clear-eyed about Indian interests.
Tanvi?
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so let me rephrase that and take it back to Maruf. Yes, Maruf. Then I would ask the question, is there a way that India can actually use this? India can actually use United States interests in the region to kind of box China into a corner?
Well, actually, we as a people are pretty good at using opportunities that come our way. The only thing is we seem to be flat-footed when it takes us to take decisions on foreign policy issues. And the one problem has been that on foreign policy, we have been kind of motivated or baggaged, I would say, with the Nehruvian dictum of strategic ambiguity. Now, strategic ambiguity was very well at a time when the world was evolving into a world order after World War II. And Nehru wanted non-alignment as his calling card, just like Gandhiji had non-cooperation. But the world has changed. You're either with us or against us is the kind of dictum everyone follows. Now, what were our pressure points against the rest of the world? In 1949, Eisenhower offered India the opportunity for becoming part of a larger American alliance. Good or bad, we chose not to be part of it. But in 1971, what worked in our favor was the fact that we had a friendship with a treaty of friendship with the Russians, now then known as Soviet Union, which gave us the kind of shoulder for support when things were running out of hand, with the Americans and the Chinese all pushing in Pakistan's favor. The Russians are now very clearly looking at engaging more with China. It's a relationship built on economic necessity. It is also a relationship built on the argument that your enemy's enemy is your friend. And therefore, they are aligning themselves against the United States in the Middle East, with Iran, and even looking at a joint template to operate in Afghanistan. Where does it leave us with? You're not going to have Britain or France come out and support you other than giving a voice in your favor at the UN Security Council. You need to have a big-shouldered friend who will be able to stand in for you. And I agree with Harsh that the move to the Indo-Pacific is not happening as of yesterday. It actually started happening in the time of Obama, and they called it the rebalancing, and which began to initially they were repositioning, and the Americans would call that all the movement. More than 50% of the naval armada was not in the Pacific. They began to shift it this side, and the Chinese were very upset. But this had a long-term vision on the type of American leaders who saw in India the possibility of a long-term partnership. You don't have to be an ally. You don't have to have American bases, but you can have shared interests. And this is the central point that is going to divide the world after the COVID settles down. Are you with a totalitarian regime like China and Russia, or are you as part of a concert of democracies which the world wants India to join? And if you stand out in the middle, you'll be busy fighting your own battles. And that is not going to help our case.
Okay, very interesting to see, and if that's indeed the choice, which, whether India is going to not take a stand or pick the side, which is obviously against the kind of totalitarian, authoritarian governments that we see in China. Thank you so much to both of you, Professor Pant and Maruf Azhar, for joining us and really breaking this down for us. It could be a tectonic shift in this region as various superpowers across the world begin to now pick sides, as China begins to pick up fights at various fronts, open up conflicts at various fronts. Remember, viewers, this is what I was telling you earlier as well. The Chinese leader, head of the state, is internally seeing a lot of issues, a great economic depression, isolation across the world because of the pandemic, anger within from its own people because of the pandemic. Chinese president also has to find ways of distracting his own people. And this is what he's doing. To what extent will he go? That, of course, will decide the future of this region. We're going to take a very short break. On the other side, lots more news and updates and a very interesting story lined up for you. Stay with me.